Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about the Twilight Zone Season 5, Episode 13. It's called Ring-a-Ding Girl. So spoilers for the episode as always. And this one is got quite a big twist. In fact, it's probably the main thing that we're going to talk about is what the episode is actually doing. Because I think in the first half of the episode, it's okay, it's perfectly fine. You're introduced to this character named Bunny, who is a Hollywood movie actress who's successful, and she's supposed to be flying to Rome to start a new movie, but she gets a little homesick for her hometown when she receives a ring. She collects rings and she receives a gift from her hometown, who have collectively sent her this ring to be a part of her collection, and she gets fond thinking about it, and so she instead goes to visit her hometown. She goes to see her sister, who still lives there, with her nephew, reconnects with them, and the main sort of recurring thing throughout the episode that's a bit Twilight Zone-y is that every so often when she looks down at this ring that she's wearing, there'll be like a vision in it, right? She's seeing someone talking. The first time I think it's her sister that she sees, and that kind of prompts her to go to her hometown. And then they keep kind of prompting her to do something else, whether it be like the local newscaster in the town, whether it be someone she knew from the high school in the town, things like that. They kind of keep prodding her into like her next action, effectively. But we also have like a little scare at one point where she has a seizure, and a doctor comes to see her and says that she needs rest, that she's living too much of a hectic lifestyle, and she has to calm down. And I think what's interesting about the episode is that for a lot of the episodes, you think the main thing that it's dealing with is the idea of this woman who left her hometown, this smaller town, and went on to be successful and famous and became bigger than the town, right? The idea that she's coming back and she's a star, and that maybe she's dealing with this attitude of wanting to be treated like she's special, like she's a star. And that's something that a few characters bring up over the course of the episode, is accusing her of being a show-off or of expecting them to roll out the red carpet like she's important, that kind of thing. And it felt like for a lot of the episode that was the main idea, that was the main theme. It's certainly the main thing I was noticing as I was watching it. That said, though, as these messages that are coming from the ring are going on throughout the episode, I think as soon as you hit the one from the airplane pilot, I think most people, that's where they're going to clock what's actually happening in this episode. Because there's a storm coming in the town, and the pilot's talking about turbulence hitting, and I think that's the point where most people are going to realise that she is on that plane, that the main character Bunny is on that plane, and only through the Twilight Zone is she getting this chance to have this one day of being back in her hometown, to say, goodbye to her sister and speak to a few specific people. And the big thing, of course, that she does here is that she goes to see the newscaster during the episode and announces she's doing a one-woman show at the local high school. This is a show that she'd done already in Las Vegas, and this was her gift back to the town. And this creates a little bit of controversy from her sister and the townsfolk, because their annual picnic thing happens today, right? So she's setting up a competing event in the town, which naturally gets a lot of kind of like accusations of her being entitled, of like saying, no, drop the thing you were going to do to come see me. And that very much felt like it was fitting into this theme of the big star who grew bigger than the town coming back and all that stuff. But the big reveal at the end, and I think I really liked this part of the ending. I think if it had just been she was dying the whole time, I might have felt a little underwhelmed by that. And obviously she says goodbye as they're watching the news broadcast talking about the plane. Or not even talking about the plane, they're looking at something else. But because the sister gets a phone call telling her that the plane things happened and that her sister was on it, and then she gets confused. While she's distracted, the main character Bunny says goodbye like she knows she's about to leave, and then walks outside and just fades into thin air. If it had just been that, I think I'd be like, oh, it's fine, and keep in mind this is a long time before a lot of more famous they were dead all along stories, which of course you're all thinking of one or two key things here, I'm sure. I think if it had just been that, I'd have probably just been like, okay, yeah, it's fine, but I'm not like that excited about it. I think the little thing that was nice about it is the second reveal. There's a sort of sub-reveal within that, which is that the plane crash actually lands in the town, and it lands in the park where this big picnic was going to take place. And we hear over the news, like, after they've realised the sister's gone, or Bunny's gone, and the sister's running around asking where she is, and she's starting to kind of freak out and worry that she really is gone, they hear on the news that the plane landed where the picnic is, but luckily most people decided to not go to it and go to this one-woman show instead at the high school. So effectively, what looked like this weird hubris and ego move that Bunny was making was actually redirecting people to save their lives. Whether she was doing that knowingly or it was like a subconscious thing or whatever, but she's done something genuinely kind of, I don't know, heroic, I guess, at the end of the episode. I think that was the extra little bit of spice that I think made the ending feel quite cool. I think without that, it just kind of felt like a typical, oh, she was dead all along. And, you know, we've had episodes of this show before where we've had characters who have been dying the whole time, and they've had varying degrees of success. Some have been great, some have been whatever, and just kind of bland. This one, I think, is an interesting example of one of these episodes because it does have that extra element by the end. But I think it also is interesting because it does kind of, at least I think it kind of tricks you into not thinking about it on those terms for a lot of the episode. Now, I'm not saying that the episode up until it started to reveal what was going on was great on its own, because I do think there are some problems. Particularly, I thought the ad break, like cliffhanger, if you want to call it that, was really weak. Like, they're literally just leaving to go to the store because she's got a prescription. They just leave the house and there's like nothing dramatic happens. There's no kind of like ominous line or tease of something to come. It ends at just such a random point to go to the ad break. And just to emphasize that it didn't even feel like that was supposed to be the ad break, when it comes back after the ad break, they're literally just outside the house talking about the car that they're about to go into. There's like no even time passage between the two moments. And that felt like an interesting structural thing. It almost felt like when they wrote the episode, they weren't sure where to put the break. Like, they had a 25-minute story, and they were happy with the story, but they didn't quite have that natural break in the middle for the ads, where your little stinger cliffhanger would go to entice the audience back, kind of thing. So that felt a little bit strange to me, but it's not like a huge deal ultimately. But it's something that I just kind of noticed. But what I was saying is that I do feel that it genuinely does a good job of presenting you with a story that you think is about one thing, and that thing being this actress has come back to her hometown, and we're building up to a conflict with the sister and perhaps more of the townsfolk, that she is expecting certain treatment because she's outgrown the town, and that's something the doctor maybe accuses her of when he's like checking her out before the ad break, and it's something the sister becomes kind of concerned about when Bunny does announce this one-woman show that's competing with a local town event. This theme keeps popping back up, and I think it's the good thing about it as well is that it still fits as a part of the overall narrative, even once you know what's going on, because the whole idea that Bunny herself is reminiscing about this place and wanted to come back to it one last time shows that it's very much the opposite. She very much respects that she grew up here and that she wanted to come back and do something for the people, namely save their lives. All of it still works with what the end of the episode actually is. So while I don't think it was like knocking my socks off necessarily, like I wasn't saying I'm super invested in what the story was before it got to the twist. It was a story. It did feel like it was worthwhile to have an episode about it. It did feel like it was going to have at least a narrative point it was building up to, and would potentially have a fitting conclusion for the things that it had been doing up until that point, without the twist ever coming into it. But then the twist sort of recontextualized everything and gave it kind of a sweeter, or I should say bittersweet tone. It gave it a more interesting kind of pivot, and it did give the episode a bit of spice that maybe had been missing up until that point. And it is probably fair to say that the structure of the episode before then maybe was leaving a little to be desired in terms of like being intriguing the entire time. There was not really much of a hook in the first half to really draw you in and go, oh, what's going on here? What's the mystery? Her looking at her ring and seeing messages from various people or scenes of various things happening wasn't that exciting as a Twilight Zone concept. What was exciting is when it turns out what this actually all is. She's seeing reality in her ring. Not that what she's actually doing is not reality as well. That's something that's important about the episode, is by the end, is that for maybe a minute I thought, oh, maybe this is all in her head. This is just her saying goodbye in her head to the people she cares about. But then, of course, the whole saving the town from being like at the park when the plane crashed, the fact that happened means no, this was all real too. She somehow was also really with her sister. When she disappears, her sister's like, where is she now? Like, she was just here. We've been talking to her all day. So it doesn't do that thing that I thought it would be, again, the easier, and something that the Twilight Zone's kind of done before, is that, no, this was just all something in their head before they died. We've definitely had that exact kind of story before. This was different in that, no, all of these things she was doing in town also happened. She was somehow in both places at the same time, thanks to the Twilight Zone. I think that made it more interesting, because it was like, oh, she actually had an impact. She had an effect. She accomplished something with this final day in her hometown. So, yeah. If I'm sort of like summing up my feelings on it, I think it's fair to critique the first 2/3 of the episode of not being amazingly interesting. It's fine. Like, it's not bad by any means. But there's not really much of an exciting hook or something that's super intriguing on its own. But then once it starts teasing the actual, like, plane crash, and then finally sort of all the other reveals that come on top of that, of, like, what she's actually done in the town, all of a sudden, the episode in hindsight was a lot more entertaining. And I think that's okay in a 25-minute episode of Twilight Zone. I think this is the sort of thing where if this was a movie and I felt like an hour of the movie was like the first 2/3 of this, and then you got an interesting ending, I think it'd be a bigger hurdle to get over. I think with a 25-minute episode, it's like, okay, no, you get to that interesting stuff still relatively quickly overall. So, yeah, that's not bad. I think it's just an interesting one, because it is maybe a little flawed and maybe not instantly amazing or anything, but by the time you get to the end, it's like, oh no, it's pulled some interesting tricks here. Albeit, I don't know how deep I would call the tricks, but they're still fun tricks, and I was satisfied with what they'd done by the end. It's interesting. This season's been a very interesting batch of episodes. Obviously, there was the one really famous one that was still in this season, but obviously, we've got to this point now where we've done so many of the same types of themes over and over, because there's so many episodes every season of this show, that it is interesting seeing them try and tackle a tried and true idea that they've had before, which is like someone dying in their last grasp of a memory or their last grasp of someone they care about, and see them just put some new sort of twist on it. And sometimes it feels like they're putting a twist upon a twist, and you can sort of feel them trying too hard. I don't think I felt that here. This felt like a genuinely interesting, different take on it. So, yeah, that's Ring-a-Ding Girl. Not bad. Not bad. Certainly, I think, an interesting episode for this season. So, next time on the show, Rod came on and talked about a hit and run, and the character being in something of a... Did he say a chase? I don't think he said a chase. But anyway, he talked about hit and run. It's called U Drive, and here's the description on IMDb. After being involved with a hit and run accident that resulted in the death of a child, Oliver Pope is haunted by his car. Okay, I'm sold. Now, I'm remembering Rod said something about the car being not just any kind of car, but he didn't say he was haunted by it. That's kind of sold me on it. I guess we're getting kind of maybe a precursor to something like Christine or something like that. Either way, that sold me on this episode. Hopefully I have a good time with it, because I like the sound of that. But yeah, I'll see you next time for Twilight Zone. You can, of course, support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get some bonuses, and get monthly reviews of Columbo from myself. There's bonuses for all the movie podcasts that I do over at MailFuzz Movies with other people. So please check it out. Hit the like button, helps out a bunch. It's free, it's easy to do. Click the button. I hate having to ask, but YouTube works this way, so we have to give in to it, I suppose. But that is me. Thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.